Which comics? Yeah. So, what do you read? Oh. Moving now. Okay. American comics, 2000 AD. What kind of stuff do you like to read?
2000 AD for me.
Well, it used to be like the superheroes, but now as I've got older, I like any sort of movie, obviously. Yeah. I've grown older, yeah.
Because when I started off, I read the old IPC Smash and Pow. That had the Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko reprints. That's my first indoctrination to American comics. So, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to waffle aimlessly, and if anybody wants to fire questions in and things like that, so because I can't make tomorrow because I've got a dash home. Everybody's got sickness and diarrhea apart from me. So I'm going to go back and tend to everyone. There's 2 small children, a wife and an older daughter, so I'm the only healthy one. So 2 days worth of questions, just throw everything at me, it's fine. I'll kind of give you some of my background and then kind of how I work and what I've worked on, and so it's going to be all over the shop. I started being mad at a certain age. I started off reading on Smash and Pow and being known and things like that. But it was the Jack Kirby Fantastic Fours and the Steve Ditko Spider-Man, so kind of like, what's this? And I was at an age as well, in the news agents you get the big pile of American comics that kind of came through as ballast on ships. So you'll never get consecutive issues. So you get like a Spider-Man or a Morbius or a Vampire, or it was mainly Marvels I noticed, not so much DC's. So you pick through stuff and kind of treasure these things. I dare say there were 1 or 2 comic shops, but not a great deal. As I got a little bit older, in Birmingham there was the Andromeda Bookshop, which I think was the 2nd oldest science fiction bookshop in the world. The first one was in France, I think, run by Roger Payton. And they used to have a box on the counter, and they would bring they primarily science fiction books, but they did put some Marvel and DC's now, a penny a cent. Flick through them, just hopefully try and fill the gaps in. But so I started off with Smash and Pow, and then graduated to 2000 AD. So and then I kind of drifted out of that as I got to my teens and 20s and discovered beer and clubs and girls and going out, as one tends to do. So but it wasn't until the 80s when I kind of got back in with hearing about the Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns and Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing. I thought, oh, give it another look, and that's basically how I got back into comics and kind of like established, well, not even a career at that point. I was just kind of enjoyed reading and I thought, oh, I fancy doing this. And so I got together with some friends, we did some bits and pieces, but never really thought much of it. And at the time I'd been unemployed for 5 years actually. That is Britain, it was all grim and grey. And I used to actually buy and sell 50s and 60s clothes and do stalls at the universities and selling overcoats and leisure, denim jackets and all that kind of stuff to kind of supplement my income. My girlfriend at the time said, "You're going to be unemployable," which I was fairly unemployed at the time. But I ended up working for an organisation called the Urban Wildlife Group, doing as just a gopher in their PR department, running around. And then I ended up actually running the department for about 2 or 3 years. People left and they kind of moved up. And then I moved over to working on a film magazine. It was like called Fantasia, it was like a science fiction empire kind of magazine that was done in Birmingham. But when they folded, I kind of decided, right, that's it. I'm going to go self-employed. I've done some comic writing part-time, thought this is it. It's fate. So I decided to give it a go. And at the time there was the Manpower Services thing where you could get 20 quid a week if you came up with your own business plan. And so my girlfriend at the time, her mom was an accountant, so I put a business plan together to be a comic book writer, because that was kind of a core celeb. Oh, look, comic book in the newspapers, I think, oh. So I got together with a friend of mine who he'd been to Birmingham Poly and done his art degree, and he produced a self-published comic called Eating or Take Away, named after the chip shop that he just finished to go to after they got completely laddered. So Steve and I, we got together, we put together a comedy detective strip called Downtown about a private eye who got killed, but he drank so much coffee that he couldn't die. And so this city basically was kind of like we were just seeing the pants thing, but it was like a nexus. It was like where all times and dimension, everything kind of met. Basically, so you'd have Tintin and dinosaurs and everything. It was just kind of mad and wacky. But Nostalgia Comics, which is the big comic shop in Birmingham, there was a signing tour of the guys who worked for Deadline, which was a magazine that came out in the 80s, and that was run by Steve Dillon and Brett Ewins, who were artists for 2000 AD. They'd worked on Judge Dredd and done some stuff for the States. And they got together with some younger artists, one of them who is Jamie Hillett, who did Tank Girl and obviously went on to do Gorillas and Monkey Bang and all that. So they did the signing tour. Now, Steve and I kind of I've got the scripts and Steve done the artwork. We hadn't really lettered up because we didn't have anybody to do the lettering. So if you have somebody independently, you're just a speech balloons, 9 times out of 10. I'm not going to comment. So we kind of shuffled up to them, shoved it under their nose, kind of shuffled away, and they read it on the train, and they actually said, we'd like to run these stories, the one story that we've done, and the perspective, we've got some notes for another one. So they ran one story, and then we did a kind of Christmas story for their Christmas issue. And then Steve got signed up by a company called First Comics in America, so he works at this comics team. I thought, right, what do I do now? I've lost my artist. But there's a chap who we both really know now well called Dave Elliott, who kind of works for various publishers. He's kind of a packager. He puts stuff together and puts people in contact with each other. And he showed the stories to Dark Horse Comics in the States, who they're not just started up, they've been going for a few years. And they had an anthology book called Dark Horse Presents, and they had things like The Mask and Concrete, Buckle, Chadwick, so it was a nice little showcase. And they ran those 2 stories. And I said, do you have any more? I said, well, yes, but Steve's working up here now. And they said, well, would you like to come work on a Terminator comic? Let me think on it for a nanosecond. So it was just after the second movie, and so Marvel had a license to do the adaptation, and they kind of they didn't really know what to do with it because they couldn't do, it was an old Marvel, there's a new Marvel coming out. They couldn't do it with extreme violence and things, so it was very, very soft pedal. So they kind of let the license fold and Dark Horse picked it up. And they, what they did was kind of like an expanded universe. They said, the events of the film happened, but these things also happened as well, and other travellers came through and were over here. And so I did an arc, that 4-issue, 5-issue thing, and then they said, well, would you like to come do some aliens? Okay. So normally the route back then, if you were a British writer or an artist, is that you go to the UK convention down in London, run by a guy called Frank Plowright. He used to organise conventions, seemed like he did a sterling job, he was amazing. And they would have big guests from the States, Chris Claremont, Dave Gibbons would be there for like things. And DC would come over and they kind of headhunt the talent, and then you go and work for DC. I kind of like circumvented that. I didn't work for 2000 AD then, I just got scooped up by Dark Horse and kind of some aliens and Terminator. And that sort of set the mould for what I did. I did a lot of license work. The Terminator stuff, they had several mini-series arcs, so mine kind of fitted into the arc they done. But the alien stuff, I could kind of basically watch the films, take what you want, kind of run with it. So it was nice, kind of like contributing to the canon.
We should.
So yeah, that's kind of how I got into doing a lot of like license work. I contributed to the Alien canon. One of the things I did was a one-shot called Alien Purge, where basically I set up the idea that if you're infected with a facehugger, it's basically set on this colony, it's a leper colony. Basically, I set up that dry leprosy retards chest burster from coming out of you. So, and I set up the idea, has anybody seen the Alien films and Alien fans? I just what I don't know what the hell.
Really safe ground here.
But so because in the first film, Ian Holmes says the facehugger is basically it's polarized silicon, and so I asked to extrapolate the androids were like a silicon-based life form. So in essence, this is like a small business colony out in the boondocks, and what they're trying to do, they're using the leper colony, and they're basically trying to grow organic androids. So using the alien technology and so that's kind of like, they've kind of put that into the canon a little bit. I've read some of the novels that kind of like mentioned. But also in one of the miniseries I did, I actually came up with this guy genetically engineered an alien king as opposed to an alien queen. This is a savage also. They made a toy of it, and I don't see it. Because it's, as soon as you put it down on paper and it's under license to 20th Century Fox, they own it all. So It's as a cautionary tale as well. If you have an idea for a Marvel comic character and you go, oh, that's really cool, we'll have Spider-Man as a truck-driving gorilla. As soon as you put that down on paper, that belongs to Marvel. They have proprietary rights. If you send it to them, they say, no, but we own it. So you have to be really careful what you do these days. It's very litigious and kind of own. But no, so I have, it's kind of bittersweet. On my office wall, I have the toy in the packet pinned to the wall. And to add insult to injury. These guys have Ian's griping today. But my Terminator miniseries, I had the Terminator scriptural revelation, the endoskeleton, but he went into kind of aggressive battle mode, so coated himself in spikes and nails and things like that. And guess what they did? They made a toy of it. So I had them both pinned on the walls, like, you know, wear it. But it's so nice to see stuff that he did come out of the toy as well. It's kind of part like, that's so cool, and I want my money. But
there's an interview, there's an interview with Jack Kirby's wife before she died, and he got physically upset by going into the toy shop and seeing all the Marvel comics that he created and cut as toys. It really upset him.
Yeah, I mean, my friend Steve, he actually came up with a redesign of one of the characters and a new character. He does get something off that now. They're a bit more general, not that generous, but general. But because it wasn't Dark Horse so much, it was like 20th Century Fox, and so they, you know, anything they do, they own kind of thing. So it's fair enough, but it's.
Alan Moore said the American comics were started by gangsters and still
run
by gangsters.
Yeah, it was I think the early days of Timely, they were used to launder money, definitely. That was like Maya Lansky or something, but it was definitely.
There's some truth in that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's one of my editors at Marvel, Bobby Chase. She was lovely. She actually, how bizarre the industry. She actually started off as a fashion model. She used to work for a designer called Bill Blass, and she was like a fit model where they got put the clothes onto her own pin. And she was my editor, and she told me that when she first started, there was an artist who worked there, and he came up the same period as Jack Kirby. Now, Jack Kirby's background is like basically Godfather Part 2. It's early days in New York, you know, kid with dope boy caps selling newspapers and a guy and all that. Just classic, stereotypical 1920s New York. And Victor Coletta, that's his name. And basically they all came, and you either became a gangster, a cop, or a priest. And he wrote his biography, and she said it was like Goodfellas. It was the most shockingly violent thing she's ever read. And the only thing he'd done, he toned down the sex because he didn't want to with his wife. But basically, he was little Vinnie Coletta from Little Italy, and it was like Goodfellas and Godfather Part 2. And he gave it her to read because she was kind of from outside the organisation, and he didn't want to kind of shock her too much. She said it was amazing. I mean, I wish it had been published because I would just love to have read it. But that was the background that a lot of them came from. It was so much of a frontier town back then. So I mean, publishing the comics was, the only reason they did more Superman was because the first few Superman sold, and they were right, we'll coin this, and it was such a kind of like a gold rush kind of business. And like I say, it was used to launder money for the gangsters way back when in the 20s and 30s. But completely off my track.
Not aliens.
Aliens, thank you very much. So I did the alien stuff. I did some Star Wars stuff as well, that was quite interesting because I didn't realise outside of the Splinter, we were talking about Splinter of the Mind's Eye and the first few Brian Daley Han Solo novels, all the stuff, the novels, the comics are all meant to be canon. They all fit into the same. I didn't realise, which is a great idea. I didn't realise. So I did a Lando Calrissian arc, which is called Lando's Commandos.
Thinking about the money.
They thought it was going to do really well, and it did. Because no, it's Lando Calrissian. Where he's one. But and then I did think about the Commandos with my friend Steve Pugh, who kind of was free with stuff. So that was good fun. And then another thing I did for Dark Horse was Planet of the Apes. This was before they realised that Tim Burton was going to know his died horrendous. It was all the big thing, and then all hush hush and all, and I pitched some ideas, and they said, well, I said, well, what's it about? How can I do it? And they said, well, we can't tell you anything. We can't tell you anything in case you leave. No. I said, well, can you let me have it? We'll send you something. And they sent this thing. It was the size of a phone book. Now, bear in mind, they couldn't tell me anything about it. It was costumes, it was sets, it was production design. It was about 1,000 pages, but it was a set Bible. And they were saying, can't tell you anything, but here's everything. So my initial idea was, before I saw that, it kind of crossed me the post, and I said, well, imagine Akira Kurosawa's ran on Planet of the Apes. Thousands of guys in armour with battle flags and dragon-shaped muzzle, muskets on stands and things like that. And it wasn't that far from what they'd done, but unfortunately nobody had anticipated the film in the real colour, which is good. So that kind of died to death. Bizarrely, it's all strangely interconnected. Although the comic industry seems to be quite vast, it's that kind of 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon kind of separation, I think. The guy, Will Simpson, really lovely Irish guy who worked with on my Aliens miniseries, he kind of disappeared, I didn't know where he'd gone. I knew he'd done some stuff for Magic the Gathering, doing cards and things like that. It wasn't until I saw an interview on television I realised he was a production designer on Game of Thrones. That's cool. So, what you doing on there? Because of course I didn't realise it was all filmed in Ireland, and so it's like, oh, so I can't go home. But in the meantime, after I'd done some stuff for Dark Horse and Terminator things, a lot of these things run concurrently. So I started to do some things for Marvel. They'd asked me to pitch for taking over Blade, the vampire. And it was way before the movies and things and so on. So I put my pitch in. I didn't realise at the time I was in what they call a bake-off, which is a really insidious kind of thing, because they don't tell you you're actually in competition with 4 or 5 other people. And they basically make you think that you're going to be the sole guy, but they kind of have you all running concurrently. So I won. But they actually said, well, we like your outline, but we don't want any of that. We want something completely different. And by the way, you've got to get the first book in by the end of next week. So you have to go back and do a whole new year's worth of outlines. So you come up with a year's worth of outlines, which you think, okay, that's great, and it gives me time. So all of a sudden you've got to come up with a whole new lot, whole new characters, which is part of the course to a certain degree. But what I wanted to do is, they got him initially to kind of like Mad Max, Kenneth Anger, leather guy with a leather jacket with studs on and things like that. And I thought, well, let's take him back to more like a 70s Black Panther, vampire hunter kind of guy. And Dracula as well was he'd been in the jacket and cape, and so I wanted to do more time with the fanciful Coppola movie, where he'd been a warlord and we'd done this and that. He had to have the dinner jacket and work. I said, well, let's give him white hair, because he doesn't have white hair in the book. He said, no. So that was my first kind of butting up against the corporate kind of wall. So that ran for like about 12 or so issues, and then they cancelled the book, amusingly, because it was only selling 80,000 copies. If you sold a book at 80,000 copies these days, they would have you bronzed. It's just the way the market is. So, but then I did a couple of other bits and pieces for their they did a futuristic line called 2099, which it was a Marvel universe reimagined, a century hence kind of thing. They referenced their old characters, but it was like a new Spider-Man, a new Doom, and a new Punisher. So the next book I got involved in was X-Force. It's a friend of mine, Warren Ellis, who they wanted him to come back and write a bunch of stuff, but he couldn't do it. So what he did, he took 4 X titles, revamped and did like an overview, wrote the plots for the first 4 issues of Generation X, X-Force, X-Man. And then myself and Brian Wood and a couple of other guys came on, and we carried on from there. So scripted up Warren's first part, came to do the rest, which involved like Moira McTaggart and Domino, various other characters. Oh no, in Warren's plot, they've been approved. They're all in. No, you can't do any of those. So yet again, we're making up the rest of the year's book from scratch, which is kind of my favourite analogy I use now. It's like trying to fix a car while it's rolling downhill. So you can kind of end up in that kind of situation. And it worked okay for a while and things and so on, but there were various internal things going on at Marvel that I think they got into Chapter 11 by then, and then they were hemorrhaging money. They bought a toy company and blah. And so this quite aggressive business chap came in and basically they revamped the company completely, sat loads of people, brought new people in, and that's where you get the Ultimus line from now, and how Mark Miller came in and kind of, and he did. I mean, I can't run because he did rejuvenate for a real shot in the arm and the line. But, you wouldn't have the Avengers and the Free wasn't afraid of that. So, excuse me, I can't run. But just before that happened, Marvel had a license to Star Trek. So, myself and Dan Allen, we were signed up to do the Early Voyages, which was the series that involved Captain Pike, and Star Trek Unlimited, which was a big quarterly book. It was half next gen, half classic Trek. So Dan and I kind of like, he did the plot, I did the scripts. Oh yes, right. Okay. Two ways of working. Marvel, DC, and Dark Horse use regular script, which is like a shooting script. It's kind of page 1, panel 1. Nervous man sits in front of a group of slavering, hungry media people. Dialogue. It's all very much like a shooting script. The Marvel way, which was come by Stan Lee, so he could actually write umpteen books all in one go, is that he would just put the plot down. He'd go pages 1 to 5. Silver Surfer walks into the diner, blows his nose, goes to the toilet, goes out, kills Galactus, comes in, blah, blah. And then the rest would be left to the artist to do. And 9 times out of 10 dialogue as well, even though Stan. It's very contentious, but Stan created all these things. A lot of it was left to Jack Kirby. The visualization, Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. The visualization was down to these guys. So they get a page of plot and they would turn it into like 5 pages of like astonishing artwork. So it's like who put the most effort in. So you would do the Marvel, do the plot the Marvel way. They've changed it now. I think they let it work which way you like. Pretty much. But so the Star Trek comics, we did Early Voyages, which was Captain Pike, and we set up like his new crew. We had the Marshall Baron #1 in there. We looked through the cast list and like people who were like big players. We tried to like bring them in. And we had 2 engineers. It's a shame because it only ran for just over a year, but we had twin brothers who were engineers. We called them the Wright brothers. And so that was, and we explained like little plot things and stuff to do with relations, and it was actually a really good laugh. And a friend of mine at the time, a few years later, who was working over at Vital, said that when they were in the early days when they were doing Enterprise, our series circulated quite a lot around the office. So I'm thinking, should I be proud? Are we today? But the chilling moment was we were at the meeting in the Marvel offices, myself and Dan, Scott Lockdale, who was writing the X-Men Star Trek crossover, and Chris Claremont, who'd written the Debt of Honor graphic novel with Adam Hughes. And we were all talking, and there were 3 power-dressed ladies from Viacom. They're only about this tall. They look like televisions. Big shoulder pads, skin and like walnuts, tanned beyond belief. And partway through, I think it was Pamela her name, she said, now you do know Star Trek isn't science fiction, Star Trek is the future. And we were like, okay. Moving on. So, but I mean, that was good fun to do. And we, one of the most interesting is when we did the Next Generation was Patrick Stewart had one of the issues got really, really badly delayed. Patrick Stewart had plastic surgery. He had his lines tightened up. And so the artist had to go back and redo all the artwork. But to his credit, God bless Jonathan Frakes, he said, don't make me sound too stupid or look too fat. I've been a big fan of Jonathan Frakes now, so I just think he's a good artist.
Being the fan of something, do you find that a help or a hindrance? Do you think it's better to come fresh to something that you don't know and then research it, or do you think being a fan helps?
No, I like it. I mean, that's what I'm. Some of the computer game stuff I've been asked to do. I'll do the Hellgate London series. That was quite interesting as well. Everything's interesting. It's this kind of these demon things take over London, and these kind of Knights Templar are fighting them, and it's all futuristic and blah blah blah. We got partway through it, waiting for the graphic novel to come out, and they actually got to it saying, graphic novel's going to be delayed. Somebody in China has just been on our server and stolen 2/3 of our lines of code. It's like, you don't forget, that's all right. So, but it all came out and things and so on, but the game didn't do as well as they anticipated, but mainly I think because they had that hiccup. And then I did Kane and Lynch, which was set between the 2 games, which is basically about 2 hitmen. And pretty much it's 6 issues of 2 hitmen swearing and blowing shit up. As you do. That's. I said I had, they sent me all the cutscenes and they sent me the script from the new game and things like that. And I said, have you played the game? I said, well, I don't really get much chance. I'm not much of a gamer, but I said, don't worry. So after the first issue, it just gore, swearing and blowing shit up. So you go, and most recently, I've just done a game for Dead Space 3, the new game comes out, 100-page graphic novel. Again, I'm aware of the game and I know it's no simple cutscenes and script and stuff, but I said, does it really matter? And I said, well, no, not really. It's set between the two games. It's kind of, they gave me, the bid, and said, you've got to get from A to G kind of thing, and you've got to have these bits in the middle, how you get there is up to you. So it was like, okay. And they'll say, well, we need to change that, or they need to use those words or that technology. That's exactly so. One of the hardest things actually was I did the story for Doctor Who Monthly. I submitted the story, they kept saying, would you do something? I submitted it, and I went, no, doesn't sound, not David Tennant, is it? Doesn't sound like David Tennant, no, so they went away. And I said, well, that's okay. So, I've done 3 rewrites. It's not becoming cost effective anymore. You have to work out like a times money ratio sometimes. It's just how much effort you put in for, it's a business essentially. And lo and behold, that month later they came back and everything else they'd had just wasn't. So I was kind of like very much a poor relation, but the only one they could go. So they came, well, we'll go with yours. Okay, I said, well, can I actually get it in by tomorrow? Okay. So it's kind of like, right, okay. But there was Adrian Salmon was my artist. I don't know if anybody's seen his stuff in the Doctor Who Monthly. He's got a really nice kind of almost like German expressionist, very angular kind of style. Yeah. And so it's called Universal Monsters. So basically the Doctor and Martha land on this planet, and there's the village, and the villagers are fearful of the guy living in the castle, and so on. But what you actually find out is like everybody in the village is a monster, and the guy in the castle is the good guy. Because basically they were genetic weapons. These things called chimera that could turn into monsters. And the war ended, but they didn't want to kill them off because it's like a prison colony, and he's their warder, but he's a clone. So the reason he's lived forever is that he keeps cloning himself, but he's suffering from pattern degradation. So he's trying to take genetic material from there, and so he uses like a sampler, which is like a. So you think he's a vampire, and so kind of turned it around. So I was quite pleased with that. That was quite fun. Now I've just done a tortured audio adventure that was set just after Miracle Day, which is that was quite fun. It was they didn't go with my A story, which I was really pleased with. So I had quite a nice story, and they really liked it. And it was to do with Rex Matheson, who's the new character, the guy who's been in a house, and basically they said, "Oh, I can't do that because it'll clash with the script and what we're about to film." Bearing in mind my Miracle Day was running, I was going, "Are you really telling me that you haven't finished filming Miracle Day?" And we couldn't possibly say that. So I don't know whether they had or not. So I had to come up with a B story quite quickly, and it was a bit more of a cliche. It's kind of like a body hopping, like bio vampire kind of thing. But that was quite fun. And also Kai Owen recorded it, and that was like he was cool. That was just really excellent to do.
We need to see more of it. I'd like to see much more of him on TV.
I think he's excellent. I think he was clearly a breakout character. You know, a bit like Daryl in Walking Dead. He was like, they hadn't really thought much about it, but he was definitely a breakout character.
You could see them writing with him more and more as the series went on.
Yeah. And they actually did say to me at one point, they kind of like said, you put a bit too much, I think we need more Gwen, and we need to make it steer back to me a bit more. I mean, the episode does open with her in this banful, and she's vomiting into a bucket to her hair. But that was good fun. Although I was so embarrassed. I was at San Diego Comic Con one year, and it was when Russell T was still doing Doctor Who, and he was like just into the David Tennant. And I'd been emailing and doing Doctor Who stories, and I was there, and I'd left some graphic novels for the guy at BBC America because he was doing the signing. It was a big queue. And over the crowd I hear, he's here, Ian Edgington's here, where is he? So I walked to everyone. And all of a sudden, I channeled my inner Elton John, and I just went in front of everybody, hello dear, like that. And it was just, but it was just like, I was annoyed. But, so I do kind of have those moments. Although, see, this is where the waffling and all over the place goes. One of the first San Diego Comic Con, sorry.
Scarlet Traces.
Yes. You've got to just finish this bit and I'll come. the first San Diego Comic Convention I went to, I had no idea how. I think the first day there were 45,000 people through the door, and since then it's just ridiculous. It's been massive. And I was meeting a friend of mine in the hotel lobby, waiting for him to come down, and I just looked in the corner, sitting on the sofa talking with Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Harl Nelson. Oh! And it's just like, I want to go and say hello, but Harl Nelson will tear off my head and shit down my neck. So, but I just thought, I don't need to talk. I just thought, I just have that memory. You know, Stan, Jack, and Harl Nelson. I was like, that's so, and I think I've actually got goosebumps with it. It's just that, and actually that same day I met Jim Stranko as well, who is a tiny man, and he dresses like an old hairdresser. He's got this brilliant white quiff and this white linen suit, but he talked like a 1950s biker. And he goes, "Hey kid," like this, and he said, "He called me kid." I was like, "I mean, I've got 30 or something like that." And we just got talking, and I helped him move his booth, and he gave me this signed print to my pal Ian Edgington. Absolutely. But again, that same convention, I was kind of shell shocked. Like, oh, they had a big Robbie the Robot, the actual Batmobile. I know the tons of stuff. It's great because the actual Bat you can actually see where they soldered the fins on. You know, you can actually see it, but it's just and I was just standing like shell shocked. And I heard this voice going, "Hello," and I turned around and it was Margel Barrett sitting on her own at a table. Just nobody was talking to her, and so I stood for like, must be over an hour just talking to Margel about, England and things and stuff. Nothing Star Trek, nothing, and it was just so lovely. And it was, and she shook my hand, and it was like, sort of all memory. Yeah, absolutely. And there were like so many, you think now we longing to when you meet people and stuff. And I kind of fall over my words sometimes. If I meet somebody, I go, good, and because people you grew up with. That same convention, Stan, God bless him, was doing signing at the Marvel table, and they have a lot of what they call blue babes going around on some of the less reputable, and these are kind of nude models, or sometimes they're even porn stars, basically. And they wear next to nothing, and basically they saw all the cameras and things coming with, and so Stan was sitting down, and basically Stan was at boob level. God bless him. They would come and solo and Stan's not going to usher them away, but Stan had his own basically version like CIA, and they were going to get Hooker away from Stan, get Hooker away from Stan. Like, and Stan was like, "Oh, yeah, come sit to my knee." And, that was most memorable. I do have other anecdotes, but I dare say anecdotes.
You can move off then.
But sorry, Scarlet Trace.
Scarlet, I think that's when I first really got aware of your work and that, and it's a lot of graphic novels, pick it up, read it, on the bookshelf, tell the dust. But there's so many little things hidden in Scarlet Traces. I can take it off and read it again and again, and there's something I didn't spot last time. And I'm just curious to know, a lot of it is visual gags.
Yeah.
How much of that is your sort of stick this in here, here's another idea, or?
Scarlet Traces is one of my oldest studies. It's a sequel to War of the Worlds, and it's what happened after the Martian invasion. What did the industrious Victorians do with the technology? And it's mooted in the book that the invasion is worldwide, but you never really know. So I said, well, no, I invaded England because England, Britain is an island, perfect bridgehead. You invade, consolidate, spread out. So all the technology is left in the lap of the greatest empire of the planet at the time. So many years later, there are like heat ray ovens in every house. People that don't use horses anymore can go along on crab legs and things. And basically, what's happening is the bodies of young women have been found washed up on the Thames, drained in blood, and they think it's this vampiric character that came to them around years ago. And the story centres on Robert Wharton, who's a gentleman adventurer who's kind of been put out to pasture, like the world's left behind. And his butler, Archie Curry, who was his sergeant, who's based shamelessly on Danny Rabbit from The Man Who Will Be King, the Sean Connery character. The Archie Curry's niece is one of the bodies that's found washed up. She came down to London to work because there are great automated industrial estates now. So unemployment in the north is rife with poverty, it's hideous. And so people come down to work, and she disappeared and actually found washed up on the Thames. And so he takes the case. And it's this exploration of the underbelly of this high-tech London, and then they go to the north, and then actually find it. Do you want to tell you what happened? Well, the book's out of print, so you can't get it. So essentially, basically, the Secret Service have a live alien. He's sealed himself in the cab of his war machine, so it's hermetically sealed, so he can get germs through. And for a decade, they've been interrogating him. He reads like his children's primary, say he's sealed. Because what they're going to do on the 10th anniversary, the UK is going to invade Mars. But it actually ends.
Anniversary or their 10th
Scientists.
There you go.
They won't be expecting it on our 10th anniversary.
Exactly. But Archie gets killed. Our hero loses his arm. And basically just gets dumped on the street because everybody's behind the invasion. Nobody believes him. And so it's kind of, I didn't realise at the time there's been a book analysing comics. So it's actually written as kind of an anti-war polemic and a thing on Empire. I didn't realise that I was writing that at the time. But kind of just, when I was a kid, I had glandular fever and I was quite ill, and there was scarcely any daytime telly. So I just read Wells, Sherlock Holmes, all over, M.R. James, and then sometimes on the afternoon there'd be King Kong, This Island Earth. So all that kind of stuff is very much like a pulpy kind of mentality. It's like steeped into my bones. So that's how come I do more of that than the kind of spandex kind of thing. Cause it's, as much as I try, it comes out. And then we did the sequel, which was set in that world's 1940s, where the war's still going on. It's a bit like Vietnam. Very few soldiers have come back, and this time it centres around a female photojournalist, like Margaret White or Lee Miller. She's actually a lady, a gentry, but she works with one of the last few independent newspapers, and she goes to Mars to find out what's going on. And so that's actually quite cool as well. But all the little bits, I write a lot of them in, and then Matt, who's Israeli, he comes up with stuff as well. Just loads of little asides. I was just thinking about lots of these. There's one bit where we go to Robert Orton's secret base. Scarlet Tracy's the great game, so he's a down and out who's kind of like recovered. He's kind of running this covert mission, spying on what's going on. And he's got his little base is these kind of government shelters underneath London. And in essence, it's the one that's in Dalek Invasion of Earth, where they press the button and the panel slides. And so but his kettle is like a Dalek. And so we've done all like these little things. The opening section where the spaceship crashes into Lake Windermere is from 20,000 miles to Earth. And the two spacemen who get killed called Green and Carew from Quatermass 2. So we got, and then you see a passenger jet landing, and the air crew are all dressed up with little caps and sashes, which are from Thunderbirds. So and then in the airport we've got Sydney Greenstreet, which is a lorry, and then we've got Tom Conway and the guy who's the voice of She-Hulk, George Sanders, because they were brothers, and they also played. They both played Falcon and the Saint. But George Sanders was the Saint, and then when he didn't want to play the Saint anymore, his brother Tom Conway took over, so we've got them. And also as well as a little nod to practice, we've got the luggage actually walks on its own legs. So there's just all these little. So the actual dialogue and action sometimes just takes up a couple of lines, and then we'll all these references, kind of grounds from Google Images, going, we'll do this and we'll do that and we'll do the other. So that's it's kind of like Where's Wally? But the person you have to blame for that is Kim Newman. Yeah, because the Anna Dracula books are just, they've redone them and there's extra stuff in them, so I'd recommend you pick them up. Especially Dracula Char there's a novella at the back, The Age of Aquarius. But the best one is back in the USSA. I don't know if anybody's read that. That didn't get. It's basically in the 1920s, America went communist. So it's a series of novellas and short stories all set in, going from the 1920s onwards. So you have like, there's one story set out in the Midwest where you have the Robert Redford, Great Waldo Pepper character, who's like a barnstormer, but also he's with with Howard Hughes, who never became a millionaire. And it goes on that way. And the best one that I like is there's a short story book, not short story, it's not a novella, but if you go down to the woods today, and it has the British fighting in Vietnam. And it's about a soldier who's come back, and his story is going to be told by Powell Pressburger. But it's Bob from Bob and Terry from the Mighty Lads. And it's about them in Vietnam. They get captured by the Viet Cong, and the one guy, there's a nice nod to the book Birdie, which again, and there's this boy who's retreated to become like a bird-like guy, who's a sniper, and he's Billy Casper from Casper for a Knave, and the guy who betrays them is Butler from On the Buses. Bob actually kills him, strangles him, and the line he says is, "I hate you, Butler." So I mean, it only came out from Mark Zeisman books, I think, in the States, and there's never been I'm hoping that Time will repeat it, because it's cracking. And the whole thing ends with some people on the West Coast, and this giant lizard rises out of the Pacific. So, but no, I just kind of, talk about being a fanboy. I met Kim Newman 3 times, and each time I stuck my foot in my mouth. I was just like, I'll be. Until in the end, the 4th time I met him, look, I made a fool of myself 3 times. And he was just, he was just like, okay, I frightened him, you know. But luckily, I had Mike Carey and Chris Westerman, you know, kind of go, no, he's normal. So it was, but I just love that kind of, more Kim Newman than League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in a way, because it's the Kim Newman stuff is so saturated with those kind of references, and it's actually made me go and find other books. It's like, you know, that character, Dr. Nikolai, or this, or Zenith the Albino, you know, it's like, okay. And so you've kind of, and then you get into things like the Walt Newton universe, and all the Philip Jose Farmer stuff. I don't think anybody knows about the Walt Newton universe. Okay. It's the Philip Jose Farmer extrapolated, said that, well, he did a biography of Doc Savage and a biography of Tarzan, and he had Tarzan and Doc Savage related to each other, and Sherlock Holmes, and James Bond, and Percy Blakeney. And basically he extrapolated that back in the 17th century there was a coach party going through Walt Newton somewhere in the UK, and a meteorite crashed that far away. And everybody on that coach, the drivers, was saturated with kind of that made them, their descendants, extraordinary people. So from them you get Doc Savage, you get Fu Manchu, and it kind of like permeates down to this time, and you get Simon Templar. And so there's a big family, so it's become a big extended universe, and there's a whole, it's got a big following, and it all kind of, there's people doing loads of stuff. Those are apocrypha now, with all the additional stories and things like that. So I just love that stuff. And it's not new either. There's stuff done before. Edgar Allan Poe followed on from did a Verne copied Poe, or Poe copied Verne, and there was basically when I can't remember, you might know this story. The one where they found the giant sphinx or somebody in the Antarctic. It's magnetic. Oh, that's right. Okay, I know where I'm going. It's a sequel to Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, which was a Poe story, like a horror fantasy thing, and it's all to do with the kind of giant sphinx at the top of the world, and it's the same character. So even back then, they were kind of taking characters and reusing them and stuff. And that's what I kind of like to do. It's homaging to a certain degree, and kind of change the.
Can you say with getting that Monty Burton series, which had a similarity, there was a trio crashing in the
oh yes.
in the Tibetan Himalayas and sort of looking up like aliens. It was a very favourite program, My Childhood Champions. Did you have any other Monty Burton type thing, like a detective department?
I did a series for Warren wrote a series for Wildstorm called The Authority, which is like deconstructed superheroes, grim and gritty and kind of, and there was another one called The Monarchy, which was John McCrae drew, and I did one called The Establishment, which was basically a British-based one, and basically their base. They were hidden inside a molecule inside Houston Station. Basically. It was a tesseract fold. And so we had there were the Golden, which were basically, they looked like John Wyndham's Children of the Damned, but in essence they were the champions. There were three government agents who crashed in Tibet and alien race found them. Basically, we scooped them out and rebuilt them. You know, like telepathic, they were called the Golden. There was another one where it was Baldwin and Trudeau were basically two policemen. And one of them had died and basically was haunted by the ghost of his. So, yeah, it was, yes. But it's only that the one guy who died, since he became dead, actually decided he was going to come out. So basically, he's kind of extravagant screaming Queen gay. So, and the other one called Mr. Pharmacist after Paul Sark, who basically he's just like a chemical engine. He can extrude things and stuff. And he's basically meant to be. There was Miss Scarlet Fantastic and Ray Equus, who's Steve and Mrs. Peel. But Mrs. Peel was found washed up on the Orkney Islands, speaking the only oral version of Sanskrit. So you don't know where she came from. And it was John Drake, who was like their lead and spy master, except when he had mental blocks placed, and when he actually said, in essence he was Milkman, when he said his version of Kimosa, he became his superhero, except the reason he no longer said it anymore was because the superhero got mad. And so he basically walled up in his mind, but he accidentally got released. So it was all kind of nods to that kind of stuff. We had like a Dan Dare analogue from the spaceship that came back from Venus that had been lost in the 1950s, and things like that. And it was Charlie Adler who does The Walking Dead now. He was the artist in that, and that was good fun. Charlie was the last minute replacement. I can understand why they replaced him. Steve Pugh was the original artist, but the 11th hour and 59th minute they went with Charlie, because Charlie's phenomenally quick. I think they had a history of like people let them down, so I can understand that, but it's kind of a little bit bad that kind of Steve lost the gig. But unfortunately, when he talks and no one's succeeding and so on. But the other guy, one of the characters we hadn't started, that was killed up. I can't remember. But basically, the title story is Man in a Suitcase, and he looked like Robbie Williams, and he had a thing called a floating arsenal, where basically it was a small sidestep universe where all these weapons were, and you could see weapons from it, and he had like this neon armor. But his base was actually you could open the suitcase up and walk outside it, and that's so. But he got killed. But no, that was fun to do. I mean, I always like very kind of collective, but while still being kind of folded into the DC universe now, so which was a bit grieving, because one of the last things I did was Victoria Undead, which was Sherlock Holmes versus Zombies, which every year was a good book. But I thought I want to play it straight, so I thought I'd try and tie it into real events, give it some kind of credibility. And in the 1700s, there's a record of a comet that flew low over London, and they recorded that it was like a violent green and crimson hue, and everybody noticed it, and it lit the night sky up. So I thought, well, what happens if that did something? And then roughly around the same time, there was these outbreaks of cholera to do with Broad Street Pump, and it was all to do, and there was the Reverend Charles Snow, and I can't remember the doctor. But basically, it changed our thinking on disease. They used to think disease was spread by miasma, which is like smell, and he proved. So, they sectioned off as part of the East End. I said, well, what happens if it wasn't titled to cholera? What happens if it was zombie outbreak? And so we had that, and then we thought, well, you've got Moriarty then coming back, and the Writing back was broken and ostensibly dead, but he's perfected the formula based on this Lynchite stuff. So he comes back, it's like an intelligent dead man, and he's got the army of dead that's going to invade London and things and stuff. So you have a serious Holmes and serious Watson against this company, how they block the bridges, so you've got proper adventure going on. It's not played for laughs. Then the next one is actually Holmes and Dracula, which because it's already been set up, and the locations have been set up, and there's a building where part of the story takes place that actually still exists, this amazing tower. So we set a lot of stuff in sadly, there were going to be, it was only going to be like a 5 or 6 series part. There was going to be Holmes, and we're going to have the Holmes and the Mummy, Holmes and Frankenstein, and then we're going to have the last one will be the Return of Moriarty and stuff like that. But unfortunately, it got folded into the Wildstorm universe, into the DC universe, and DC Vertigo did New Dead Audience. Dan Abbott, my friend didn't call, but Dan Abbott, where basically there was a zombie outbreak, a vampire outbreak in Edwardian England, not Victorian England. So I recommend you pick it up. There's a trade coming out next year, I think, and it's a cracker, really good read. But they said, well, we don't want to do two things the same, so I'm hoping once that's gone, they might say, well, that's gone.
I could see Holmes being a good character for DC Vertigo, because that kind of mystery. One of my favourite is the Hound Baskervilles, which has kind of a, although it has a very logical kind of ending, it does have that sort of like air of, doesn't it?
There's a, back to Kim Newman, there's a brilliant book he's done that collects 4 or 5 novella long stories about Moriarty, but it's told from my brain, he's number 2.
Bashing around.
Yeah, thank you, yes. And the cracking story is the Hound of the D'Urberville. Honestly, it's just a cracking book. So,
Mine wrote a book called The Truss of the D'Urberville. It's a simultaneous sequel to The Hound of the Baskervilles and Tess of the D'Urberville.
sorry, yes.
I just wanted to point out that many of the books he's talking about are on sale in the dealer's room on his desk.
I have selected, sadly I couldn't bring tons of stuff, but I'm hoping to come on next year. But no, I mean, I have a big shelf at Holmes Apocrypha, my Home of War World, and Home of Dracula, just because it's just any just about half an hour.
It's not good.
Surprisingly, we're on
I'll pull a
time.
story that you.
Thursday to sign.
I'll pull a story that you told me earlier on. I was intrigued the fact you're saying that Scarlet Traces and sequels have been posed. The reason why I found interesting.
Yeah, the Scarlet Traces and War of the Worlds hardbacks from Dark Horse, they're out of print. We were looking to get a Dark Horse, so they do a nice big omnibus slipcase, 22 pages new material, sketchbooks, blah blah. And they have to run War of the Worlds by Jeff Lane because I think it's still in the public domain over here. It's 75 years, it's 50 in the States. And when we did the initial War of the Worlds book, which is when the movie was coming out, Spielberg and Paramount were buying the rights all over the place. They got me to put adverts on the back for the album. But of course, the stage shows come out in the meantime. And Jeff Lane, God bless him, said, not only would he sue Dark Horse, but he would personally sue myself in that. They went ahead and did it. So, what do you mean?
I'm just trying to get my head around, if Paramount know that they have the rights, I'm assuming from the H.G. Wells estate, how could Jeff Wayne, I thought it'd be more than just the music stuff, I can't quite wrap my head around that.
There's all various bits to do, and also public domain is different over here than over there, so it's kind of, and they said they would have bought it, they would have worked, but it just wouldn't be cost effective, so we'll wait till 2016, so they'll do a nice big slipcase hardcover. So we're going to start. We're going to do
send them a free copy.
Yeah. But it's because obviously he's got the stage show going, and it's it's a cash cow thing. So, but I don't see how it will take away from it. But it's what we're going to do is Dark Horse still do Dark Horse presented, but now it's like a big Perfect Bound quarterly anthology with new strips. So we're going to do some Scarlet Tracy stories that's set in that universe, but we don't have to reference all the worlds. So we can hint at the Martian invasion, but we don't have to say. Yeah. So that kind of like starts to generate interest, and then we'll do the book. But yeah, no, that's kind of unfortunately it's digitallessness. It's part of that. That's right. So
Only 4 years.
yeah. So by the time because we're doing one of the strips I did for 2000 AD called Stickleback is. It's basically, I wanted to do, when I was reading British comics, I used to read a lot Lion and Valiant and whatnot. I used to love Charlie Peace. I didn't realize Charlie Peace was actually a real person, like based on a real person, like a Victorian murderer or gangster or something at the time. And then there's the Spider, the comic, yeah.
Who became a hero.
I know, he was like
brought him back as a hero.
clad super villain, basically. And so it was all about him and his criminal empire and doing away with.
Sorry, was the Spider created by Jerry Siegel who created Superman?
Yeah.
I heard of that. I'm not sure it's true.
He was, I mean, at one point, I think he was actually found drawing pictures on the street, chalk, like that, which is just shameful. I think I've actually heard since that I think their families have actually lost all the court case against DC too.
I think it's Superboy is the
Because the thing that's making them all sweat is those characters assuming everything into the public domain because of how long they are. I mean, I know Disney, they actually got the law changed to keep the rights to some of their characters. Well, there's parts of Disneyland down in Florida, and nobody really knows what goes on. You're not allowed to overfly it. So I think in our connections with the military and whatnot and things, it's kind of.
Well, Mickey Mouse is coming in very good.
Mickey Mouse is super.
But Yeah, and there was also Steel Claw. Steel Claw started out, Lewis Crandall started out as a villain. So, and my favourite was the Black Max, which was World War II fighter pilots against giant bats. So again, Kim Newman had that in Bloody Red Baron, where he had the Manfred von, because it's a vampire-dominated society, and Manfred von Richthofen and the other air aces basically mutate these giant bats. They have harnesses slung beneath them with Maxim guns. They turn into giant bats. So, and then on the other side you have the flyers. They're all like, there's like beagles. And there's Ken Allard, who's a shadow, who's like the allied fighter pilots. So, but so I wanted to do a villain. So basically, I came with Stickleback. He's called Stickleback because he was born with a rib cage, the second rib cage going out the back, and the spines always snapped. He actually came into the world a murderer because obviously he killed his mother. And he runs his Gorman gas kind of Anton First design in London. And he's got his coterie of villains. There's Miss Scarlet, who like runs all the bottles and things. And she's flame haired. Well, she's flame haired, but the cut the streets in black and white. It doesn't really work. But she's covered in rose tattoos. And then there's Mr. Peepers and Mr. Lurk, who are conjoined twins. And the one has huge ears, so I could hear really well. The other one has
It's like the film Freaks, isn't it?
a little bit like the
Yeah.
And then there's Black Bob, who's this big, genial Haitian zombie, and then there's Tonga, who is Tonga basically from Sherlock Holmes. He wears a fur coat, bowl hat, blowpipe. And we've actually made it that they're a couple. It just got nobody can understand Tonga apart from Bob, and so we decided. Matt and I said, no, we're just going to make them a couple. That's it. Yeah, they're kind of there's Gay John, who's kind of like a dashing, dandy swordsman. And then Fiery Jack, who basically is a charred skeleton who's still alive and anything to touch his bones. And so that's his group. And then there's a character called Mr. Tickle, Hargreave Tickle, Roger Hargreave, who basically, he's our Kenny and we kill him off in every series. And
he's changed since I read it.
So, and we kind of, in this series that we're doing in a minute, you actually find out why he comes back, because he's got, this is going to sound really crass, he has a third testicle, he's got a jewel, he hid a jewel inside his goodies, and basically he won it off an Irishman in a card game, and he goes, it was Kelly's eye.
Waiting for that one.
See what I mean? Yeah, because there's a character called Kelly, he's got this jewel called Kelly's eye, and basically makes him immortal, he can't get hurt. So he keeps on getting killed off because he's got this extra jewel in his back. I know, it's but so Stickleback is our kind of villain. So in the first one, he encounters the old gods of London. There are these. We go to early medieval, early druidic kind of London. There are these two giants of men, Gog and Magog, who defend the land against. But they know they're getting old, they're going to die. So basically, the druids talk them into being sacrificed, and their blood goes into the ground, and they kind of become the eternal gods. So you see, there's a giant tree under them, and they're sitting on these thrones. And then the other one is an evil wild Bill Hickok. He's Wild West. He's Wild West Joe. And we've got the Lovecraftian thing creeping in there, because basically he was part of this expedition to Colorado, and they all snowbound. And basically, they lived in this cave, they ate the children, and they ate each other, and he finds this shapeless form, he gives himself to it, and basically it's kind of becomes this Lovecraftian vehicle. And the one we're doing at the minute is that seemingly our hero got killed off, but he returns. But we're not saying is it the same one or whatever it is. There are various hints throughout the story that he was a good man, but something's happened to him, and then he's like broken, and he's kind of like reinvented himself. And the speculation is his deformity isn't real, it's makeup. So who is he? And we kind of like dropped hints that it might be this guy, it might be that guy, or somebody from 19th century fiction or something. It's like you just don't know. And of course now, there's potential that he come back from the dead. Is he the same one as, it's kind of, there's one bit where it's going to sound very odd, he's sniffed by talking tyrannosaur once a week, and he says, no, you're wrong, you're broken. And so there's something different about it. So yeah, the new story we're working on is that it's all to do with Challenger's discovery of the lost world. And what we've actually got is that there are various, the dinosaurs kind of, they all evolved into different species and things and so on, and you actually have the reptilian hominids, like the sauropod kind of thing, so that we've called sauries, and they basically bring the mother dinosaur back, the creature back, and they do the production line and lay the eggs. So everybody, the serving class now, these little humanoid dinosaurs, they only live a few years, and then they get ground to fertilise them because they can produce so many. But they have to especially feed it's like factory farming, they have to feed the queens these chemicals so that they only produce servants, they don't want to produce warriors. But two certain Victorian Edwardian scientists go kind of off program and actually get a batch of warrior eggs created, and they break out and they steal the queen, and so make sure so it's kind of neurological. And we also included my favourite, Dr. Pretorius from The Bride of Frankenstein. Wilfred Thesiger, he was just super. If anybody's seen The Bride of Frankenstein, he's so great. It's just how they put it up now. He's such a screaming queen, and I just love the fact that it just came out under Hollywood's nose. It was just like such a gay allegory.
He did the Old Dark House as well, I think, to previous to it.
And funny enough, where I went to school in Halzone, in like Dudley Way, a friend of mine, Dan Whale, he's James Whale's distant relation. So, because James Whale came from Dudley. So, which is quite interesting, because when I actually filmed the film Gods and Monsters, when they actually showed, when they show stuff in Dudley, they all talk with an A up north accent. That's not Dudley. Dudley was a finest film. Yes. I didn't realise that the herbs came from Black Country. Yeah, the relations, I think 1 or 2 generations before they went west, there were still herbs in the Black Country. And also, it's the part that when I was growing up, the Black Country at the time had quite broad accents, but it's one of the last places they speak part of it's Chaucerian English. Because I remember when they go, all right, mate, that'd be, it's like, how beast that? It's, and you tell people, it's true. And I actually recently did say that for the part of Black Country, that was still, but of course now, those people have died out. But where are we? All over the shop. Oh, by the way, I'm Typhoid Mary. I have destroyed probably about 4 comic companies since I've been young. A story I think with Matt is called Kingdom of the Wicked, which is actually quite a good story. That's pretty in time. But it's a children's author who had like a sickly childhood and made up his own stories about his toys and things and so on, and then went on to become a really famous childhood author, children's author. And he starts to suffer blackouts and goes back into this land that's made up. Except World War I's happened. It's like devastated, like teddy bears and like puttees and barbed wire and things like that. And somebody put roughshod over his childhood imagination. And he keeps seeing backwards and forwards until he blacks out and he's trapped there. And basically you actually find, what did you think? You actually find that the thing that's causing it is that he was born with a vestigial twin around the base of his spine that's tapped into his brain. So basically they share a consciousness. And that kind of like initially kick-started off his stuff he didn't realise. But basically the twin is vying to take over his mind, he wants to kind of move in. And so he took over this imaginary world and he became the great dictator, ruling from the land under the bed, which is kind of a plateau. And so that's the kind of basic crime life. But it was initially going to come out from a company called Tundra UK. Tundra was set up by Kevin Easton, who had all the money from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles back in the 80s. I mean, he just buying cars, he had a Batmobile made. He married to a Playboy model, and he still had lots of money, but it was just ridiculous. There's a brilliant line for Brainy Wolfcastle in The Simpsons. They go, how do you sleep at night? And he goes, on a bed of money surrounded by many beautiful ladies. And that was Kevin Easton, basically. And so he set up Tundra UK, and they put out some books, and then basically they just kind of like burnt themselves out. we had all the artwork for Kingdom, and he kept, to their credit, even though it was never published, they gave it back to us, and we'd been paid for it. So we went to Caliber, which was a little black and white imprint in the States, and they published it, and basically, 2 weeks to publish it, but they went bust. So, and then I went to, I was going to work for a company called, well, I did some work, but didn't move over there, for a company called CrossGen in the States, and within about 2 months of me working, they went bust. So, although CrossGen was very, very strange. It was set up by Mark Alessi, who was a millionaire, well, multi-millionaire, who made his money selling his companies across the globe. No one realised at the time that he was addicted to prescription medication. He was just a fruit loop in that case. But basically, he wanted everybody to move over to the bullpenny office in Florida. Some friends of mine did move over there. The setup was great. I mean, you got whatever you wanted. Art materials-wise and things, but there was no way they could make the money back. It was not like Marvel or DC, it was just a small company in essence. And sadly, in the end, that did kind of...
The fantasy thing in DC, but they never quite get this.
Well, the stuff they put out, they got big name writers, they got big name artists, they paid money, but they paid things like healthcare, which Marvel and DC don't, and it's a big commitment. And in the end, they were hoping on movie sales, recouping the money that way, but it just never really worked out. Which is a real shame, because some of the stuff they put out was really hard. I mean, the same team then got picked up by Marvel and DC to work on Wolverine and X-Men and whatever. So, he clearly got a thing going, but it just didn't work out. But no, they went over in the summer and they wanted myself and the kids to move over for Christmas. We just said, well, we can't move our house for next school, but between then and now they can't. But it was Florida, so you never know when your house is going to get run away. But while I was there, it was extraordinary. So I stayed at a friend's house and looked out, and sitting on the fence where the camera is, was a turkey vulture drying its wings. And it was enormous. Okay, that's a big bird. But because the ground is saturated with water, and there are a lot of big pipes to take the groundwater away. And at one point they moved all these pipes away and had the bottom one was in the middle, and it was stacked floor to ceiling back to front with rattlesnakes. Thousands of rattlesnakes.
And that's not including the allegations of
well, no, the one time we were at a stoplight, and there was a truck with a crane and crank on the back, and they put this thing out. A lot of the like industrial parks things have big pools in front that like sinks, drain all the water in, and they'll crank. Alligator at the pond, and it's just alligator retrieval. No, just like cranking. And it's alligator is just trying to retain as much dignity as he has. And it's just like
euthanasia and that. If any alligator gets to close to any sort of like built-up areas, there's no point taking back to one because they'll home in. And a friend of mine was in St. Petersburg, and of course they had this thing with flooding, smashing, black and white storms and stuff. He's got a house. He's got one of those houses with the, like the greenhouse on the back with a swimming pool in. And she still managed to find one swimming in the pool. Well, they didn't go length of the bloody pool. So she had to call a rain around. And she was expecting us to take it off and chuck it in the other place, so we have to euthanize them. And although she didn't really want to punish her at all, she felt really sad about that because it's, they have to do it because it's too dangerous. But it's also because it's encroaching on her territory as well.
But we didn't get to go. So, but
I think we should expect to see 2000 AD collapse anytime now.
Absolutely. Matt and I could be fingers crossed. But,
See you coming at some point, aren't they?
Has anyone hired you to close down a rocket company? That's a new thing for your CV.
It is. One of the things I did work on as well for Boom, I did a whole bunch of Warhammer stuff, the Warhammer 40k, which was that. I've got to admit, that was the most labour-intensive stuff because they really protect their IP. I mean, it was meant to be co-written with Dan, but basically Dan's name was just Dan. It was just like sell stuff. But we did some overviews and then he just went off and did his stuff because he was just he trusted me to do it because we worked together and things and so on. Because Dan is basically their primo writer for Warhammer things and so on. But they fiercely protect their IP and stuff that you have to get stuff checked so much. The one guy we go with, the chap Nelson, who was really good, we just said, no, you can't do that. You can't have that radio, but you've got to record it, so you've got to do that. You can't. And they don't have those kind of buttons. And it was really kind of picky. And the artwork gets sent back time and time again, because they were sending these art teams, these guys in South America, who, God bless them, talented artists, but to work on such tightly regulated, outfits at that time, the books would get so badly delayed. I think after a while, when the contract ran out, they didn't renew it. But I mean, that was fun to do. Before it came to the actual sorting of the war and stuff, but it was very, very labor intensive. So.
Dan's still chuntering them out the books, isn't he, the novels?
Dan, he's a machine. Really is. I mean, I know he's wasn't very well recently, so he's kind of taken a bit more easier. So, but he's still have you read the Doctor Who novel? The Silent Stars Go By. Brings back the Ice Warriors.
I think I probably have.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's like Ice Warriors. Ice Warriors are Cybermen. Well, not Cybermen. They're my favourites. Ice Warriors. The Cybermen with the hoods and they had the bow coders.
Yeah.
Crap.
Well, that voice.
Yeah. Like two of the Cybermen.
I'm sorry to anyone else. I used to, the Daleks again, I think the first time I saw a Cyberman back in the, I just felt about laughing. There's still a bunch of this dustbin on there. but the new ones going in the new ones, the Project England reincarnation, the Autons.
But so at the minute there's a new stick back from 2000 AD. There's another series of with a guy Simon Davis who paints he's meant to have the Royal Academy, he does all these beautiful portraits, but on the only comic stuff he does things, he loves doing the comic stuff. And basically it's Lord Peter Winchester he loves craft. This guy's an officer in World War I, saw something nasty and abstract in no man's land, lost his mind, came back. His fiancée decided not to marry him, but he was healed by he has this monstrous regiment of arts. And these 7 arts, there's faith, hope, charity, grace. The other one's something really bizarre. But basically they healed him and put him back together. But basically he's kind of tuned into other worlds of things. So he and his brother Cromwell go around doing all sorts of things. The one I predicted, the trade but not I'm doing hard. The trade in the trade that wants to work particularly like the end of the Pier show, where there's the seaside landladies form this kind of cabal to bring back the sons, the spirits of their dead children from World War I, except it opens the door, and so the French and the Italians and the Germans all can go straight into the holiday goers. We basically take up sides and the song starts on Black Sands, Pleasure Beach.
You might be absurd, don't you?
It's, yeah. But and I'm just finishing. There's a series I do with Steve Dole, the artist on Zenith, Grant Morrison, called Red Seas, and it's a fantasy pirate thing that we started before the Pirates of the Caribbean. Not saying we predate the ride, not that old. But it's Jack Dancer and his crew, and it's on 10th series now. There's been a few short stories that we just labelled Meanwhile, but we're actually on the 10th series where they're down in hell, warring with them. So, but we've had them in like Lost World and the little green man and dinosaurs and that. And they go to Asgard, where all the gods actually turn into wood, because deprived of belief, they kind of dry up, so they turn into wooden statues and they look like the walking chessmen. And so, but we've basically got Odin and his wife, and Thor is the idiot's son. And we did one with Aladdin, where Aladdin did what you would do is with one of your wishes, you would wish for infinite wishes. You basically corrupt him and scoops him out. Then you find it much like one in the planet, so where basically all these arcane relics from stuff that have been stored, because what he wants is the apple, Garden Bean, that he wants to buy out, but he wants knowledge. We just plunder them all like that, because what they have. It's pulp, it's basically pulp. I make I don't apologise for my stuff is very pulpy, because that's the stuff I work with, that's the stuff I like. I don't think there's wrong, you think wrong with intelligent high adventure. I'm not Alan Moore, I'm not Grant Morrison, I'm not Warren, I'm not cynical and cigarette smoky, I'm not kind of jaded and I'm not kind of deconstructed, I'd just like to good, ripping yarn adventure, basically. That's I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just a bit of art, fun. That's all.
Where do your ideas come from? Is it like just walking about and that'd be a good idea.
Just weird stuff. I mean, the thing I read a while ago is that it turned out that Hitler personally owned 2,000 acres of Colorado wilderness.
Really?
So why and what's there?
That's sensible, right?
Yeah. There's a thing I'm working on at the minute. It's like an old idea that I dusted up. Basically, they're building a shopping mall out in Texas, and there's like a mound and things like that. They're trying to clear it away. When they clear it away, they find the Viking burial mound, way out in the middle of the desert. And so, there's a long ship, there's the corpse of the crew, something underneath it. And so, ostensibly, you find out that the Vikings fought and conquered what they call the snow giant, but was it an alien presence? They found it, and like nuclear waste, they've taken it far. They can't kill it. They've taken it far away from home as possible. And some of them, sacrificed themselves because it needed organic, bioorganic power to kind of lock this thing in. But the others actually stayed behind and intermarried with the Native American tribe. So that's why we have some of the Native Americans who have red hair. And so, but now this thing's been recovered. The storm front moves in, and the town's sealed up by the snow as this thing starts to rebuild itself. So just weird, and that was just based on this speculation that the Norsemen actually went a lot further inland in America than what we imagine. And I know that the North American community is very independent. We were the first Americans, but I think a skeleton was found that actually, well, no, this isn't a North American anthropology. It's Northern European. And they've got very protected. I think they actually stopped people studying the bones because it was on their land.
Can I remind the deceased skeleton with 3 belly getting embroidered with concrete on it?
Yeah. So it's that kind of, it just gives you that, whether it's true or not, it's just kind of like, oh, hello. So, it's that kind of, gives you a bit of a twinge of an idea. But no, I fancy space opera stuff and various things, just one at a time. At the minute, I've also been adapting a lot of young adult novels. So I adapt all the Sherlock Holmes novels for Salt and Hero, and I do Pride and Prejudice, and I do Princess of Mars, which that's got to do. Picture of Dorian Gray. But I've been doing, there's a series of books called Cherubs by a guy called Robert Muchmore, and they're about child spies, basically. And it's not kind of James, it's not the Anthony Horowitz Storm Rider. It's all, it's kind of based on the idea that after the First World War, a lot of servicemen stayed behind and married French girls, Italian girls, and they tended to war graves. So come the Second World War, their children in their early teens, and some stayed behind during the French resistance, others came back and joined the OSS and parachuted back in. So you have basically 14-year-old, 15-year-old boys and girls killing Nazis. So that happened. So he's done a string of books called Henderson's Boys, which is set back then. And then there are other ones where it's the same organisation, but now, and they're called Cherubs. And they take kids from like 11 to 18, and they only take like 200, and they train you, and because you can infiltrate, nobody suspects you. So I've done the first book called The Recruit, and hopefully doing another one. And then the other books I'm doing are Mallory Blackman's Norths and Crosses, which is an alternate world where the black and white roles are reversed. Also, though, it's not Europe as we know it, it's Pangaea, so it's like, and that's hard work to do because they only gave me 125 pages to do a 400-page novel, and it's the first volume of 3, so you need to really have what you do back. But that's been good fun to do. So and I'm trying to negotiate through Charlie Hickson for 10 books as well. So that'd be quite good. But they did the Young Bond books and they only did the one. I'm not sure how well that is. I think that's kind of covered there. But I like doing the adaptations. That's good fun.
Last question. Are you able to stay, or are you?
Yeah, no.
I mean, to the union tomorrow, or you've got to go?
I'm happy to go. So everybody's come down at home 6 and over.
So he's going to get in.
So my little boy's 2.5, my little girl's 5.
Well, that's all right.
Jane and my older daughter, and they said, "Oh no, you stay." No, I'm not.
Last year you couldn't make it because your whole family was ill. This year at least you made a day. Next year you're going to have to stay the whole weekend.
Nurseries, bloody nurseries, I tell you. Plague kids, absolutely.
So, do you know when you're leaving?
Oh, probably mid-afternoon.
Mid-afternoon, okay. So you get a short opportunity to go and buy him out of his books. I'm going to try and get to them. Sorry?
Which has happened here before.
It has happened. Nev found him last year. Author went away. He brought a whole suitcase of books, went away with one. So, not too good. So, thank you very much, Ian.
Thank you.
Thank you.